but it's called like The Verdicts, which sounds very 60s.
Yeah, most definitely.
Bill Joy and The Verdicts.
Okay, yeah, total 60s. Yeah, totally. So we just want to talk about that, the formation of Armageddon, UOA.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab these two too.
And just what the scene was like back then, because I definitely feel it's changed since.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's like, I feel like over the years in different places, different times, it's just like, stuff overlaps in such weird ways. Because I mean, like, I don't think really we were even like, most of the bands I've been in, especially those early bands, I mean, we weren't even that into hardcore. I mean, we were.
No, but I don't think you guys were thinking about it as like, this is a new genre. Right?
Yeah.
What
I
would
mean,
you
we were,
Okay, take it, bro.
obviously, especially like being young in the early mid 80s, Bad Brains, Minor Threat, you know about that stuff.
Of course.
But I think it's
PMA.
like, there wasn't as many, I feel like whatever little subgenre you might be talking about,
Sure.
it either didn't exist yet or there just wasn't as much of it.
Certainly.
So as nowadays, it's just like,
an abundance. And I mean, the internet both helps and I think also has its negative sides.
Yeah,
for the,
yeah. Absolutely.
You're good, bro. You're rolling.
We're rolling. Yeah. And so just start with introduction, name, and what bands you were a part of.
Whenever you're ready.
We're rolling.
Oh,
You're
okay.
good.
Tonie Joy. I was in All Psychon, Universal Order of Armageddon. Some people call it UOA, whatever. Was in a few bands after that, but I think you're probably focusing on those mainly.
Primarily those two, yeah. But you can add in everything you have.
Just the great unraveling,
Yeah.
convocation of, mainly.
Isn't there like Rogue Conjurer?
Yeah, that was kind of the most recent thing I
Sure,
did, but
sure.
it was super part-time,
Yeah.
just...
And so how I start all of the interviews is like, growing up, when did you, what was your first exposure to like, quote unquote different music than what was on the radio? You know?
Actually, it was kind of interesting because my older cousin, who I lived with because we were raised by my grandmother, and his grandmother, same grandmother, I mean, he was like in high school when I was like 10, so he's like 7 years older than me. And he started playing in like this, just like a cover band, like they would just play at like, local suburban pizza joint or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But they mostly were just doing like 60s, like late 60s, like rock, classic rock covers, like Who, Beatles, Stones, Kinks, Yardbirds, even like into earlier 70s stuff, Grateful Dead. And most of the guys in the band were into that. And I mean, this was like 1980, 81, 82. But there was one guy in the band, and he was probably around 18 years old, but he was just like totally on top of what was happening. Like whether it was like, a DC band like Void, or just like shit from like, Joy Division or Throbbing Gristle, or like, and he was especially into like whatever was really like avant-garde at that time. So like, Throbbing Gristle's pretty much as far as you go. And like my cousin would borrow records, but he wasn't even like that into them, it seemed like. But I would just be like, I'd go behind him and listen to the stuff he had borrowed from this guy Tom. Unfortunately, this guy Tom passed away, but he was like around. I mean, he was even around I remember seeing him around in Baltimore like in the 90s, and he was like, he lived on the West Coast for a while, but he was just like on top of like the most cutting edge shit, like when it was happening, like in the early 80s. And that was really, I mean, that put on top of having already just been like a little kid in the early mid 70s and being just into like, heavy rock. Like I joke, I didn't have a Sesame Street record. I had like a Deep Purple and Uriah Heep and Black Sabbath records because of my parents, and to a little extent my cousin, but mostly my father and, my mother. Like my mother took me to see Heart when I was like 7 or 8. It was like the Little Queen tour, like so. So it was kind of like that whole like just 60s, 70s rock thing and being into that. And seeing, even at a young age, I saw it as like a countercultural thing. Because I think it was like, to me even, it was, not that everyone that listened to Led Zeppelin or anyone who was in a band like that was like a political activist, but there was sort of like crossover. So especially with like the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement and everything, I always saw it like just like, hippies and stoners and rock music and like, even like once I learned more about like free jazz and shit like that, all that was kind of, to me, all this very countercultural thing, and I felt like the music fit with it, or even was just up against it. But then once I learned, like, discovered punk, and even like, you know, punk and hardcore were even more underground, and there was like currents of political activism in that, even, of course. So then I just kind of saw that as even a more concentrated, like, example of that, you know?
Sure, definitely. And then, so when did you start to experience more hardcore music? Like, what were shows like back then? And was it easy to find kids your age who were also into music?
There weren't that many. It's funny because it was interesting because it's not like I grew up in the Midwest or somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I was like an hour from DC, but I was young enough. I knew about like when bands like, you know, Minor Threat or Void, or like the early wave of DC hardcore, and, you know, other related bands that were sort of the same era, even if they were like, you know, like the Necros or something. I was aware of this stuff, but I was really young and I had no way to go to shows. So I mean, I remember hearing about like crazy shows happening in DC, but I didn't actually go to a show until like 86, 87 when I got my driver's license. So yeah, I didn't, and there was a small scene in Annapolis, which is like, I grew up right outside of Annapolis. So when I first, in like 84, 85, when I discovered like the Hated and the Spastic Rats, they were like you know, there were a few other bands too, this band Christ on a Crutch, who were from around DC. Eventually, I think they moved to the Washington State. But the Hated and like the Spastic Rats were like the first really, like, I guess you would say, local type bands. And these were people I ended up meeting, and they were sort of like peers, but also a little older than me. And I looked up to them. I mean, but they had like a profound effect on me, and especially the Hated. I think it was just because their music was so, I mean, it fit within the hardcore punk genre, but it was also just so unique and weird. But there was there was like no scene. It was like nothing like, you know, I mean, people probably even back then in other places experienced, or in more recent decades, you know, like, you know, you'll go to a show and there'll be tons of people, but I mean, in the suburbs, like in the mid 80s, there would just be random shows at places. It wasn't like in like Annapolis proper. It was almost really like you'd get like they try to arrest you if you're putting up flyers for a show. Like, it was just very frowned upon and very conservative. It was hard to find a place to put on shows or have shows. So
that's exactly how we grew up, deep in the burbs.
Right.
All of this loud music is frowned upon.
Right.
How did you pave, like, or I guess more so, when did you decide you wanted to create, like, beyond just observing and consuming? When did the idea to create?
I think I always wanted to, even going back to like, because I mean, like I was saying, in this early mid 70s, when I was a little kid, my father was in bands, and I started, you know, bugging my mother and him, like I wanted lessons. Like, I guess I don't even remember this, but someone told me when I was really little, I said I wanted to play drums, but the guitar, like, was sort of more on my radar by the time I was like a little kid. But I don't know, just no one ever got around to giving me lessons. I mean, my family life it wasn't like horrible. I mean, I didn't have a horrible upbringing, but it was like not real, like, structured or stable.
Sure. Elaborate on that if you don't mind.
Well, my parents split up when I was 5, and I just, you know, my father was sort of just doing his own thing and wasn't really there. And, you know, in later years, I mean, I never really had an issue with him. Like, that's what's kind of interesting about it. It was like kind of fucked up, but also like, just like, it wasn't ever any, you know, no one was horrible or like a mass murderer or anything. And my mother was just kind of young, and I mean, they definitely partied and stuff back then, and were into drugs and drinking. And honestly, I don't even really know the inner workings of it, but my mother just gave me to my grandmother. So, but, you know, I never got lessons. And so it was kind of the same thing. Like, once I got to be 16, I could go and get shit on my own. So like, that's when I started playing guitar. I got a guitar. But I do know, just the other point that's maybe relevant is the transition between like the 70s and into the 80s, and learning about like punk or underground music, or even metal, underground metal. The DIY thing like appealed to me. It was sort of like, because you're into bands in the 70s, but you still go see them in big like arenas or whatever, and so, and I knew I wanted to play music then. I don't even really know why. I just sort of like, it was always just like, it made me feel in such a way that I felt better than most other, listening to music, I felt better than most social interaction or just, reality of being a human in, America. But then when I was like the whole punk DIY aesthetic, when it's like, oh, you can actually just do all this shit yourself, that's when I was like, all right, this is like a great idea, I want to do this. And I kind of just became obsessed with it. So it's just like a creative outlet, and it's just like when you're a little kid in the suburbs and no one's really like, I wasn't really in sports and I wasn't really good at like skateboarding and shit, and so like whenever like, no one was at, I didn't have like, it's like, it wasn't like Tony Hawk's father was like fucking around the skate park or something where you're just really encouraged and you're like nurtured. So I mean, I wasn't, so I just had to figure it out and do it myself.
The scene caters the independence and blazing your own trail, and I think it gives home to catharsis.
Yeah, and I think the whole that's a good way to put it, blazing your own trail, because I think the blazing your own trail thing created scenes. Also, possibly in some instances,
Totally. And how, I'm going to skip to the future a little bit. How do you think that, like learning how to do things yourself, how do you think that still applies to your life, like now? Yeah.
It actually has a lot, even to like, I've never had like a high paying career type job, but I mean, I started figuring out how to fix cars just from going on tour in an old van. And it's like I've learned how to like fix and repair things and build things out of necessity. And it was the same thing. I didn't go to a school, and no one ever said like, oh, you should go to the school and learn this, or like, I was never really nurtured. I just was like, I need to figure out how to fucking do this, because it's like more like a survival thing. Definitely in a first world sense, it's like, it was like a luxury still to have a shitty old van to be able to go on tour, but, we couldn't pay to fix it. So, I mean, in some instances, you had no choice, or you borrowed money, but, so yeah, I think the DIY thing just applies to everything really, and I think it's sort of come back full circle, I think, to where like, people like just, whatever they're doing, like making like tiny homes or whatever the fuck it is, it's like, I think the DIY thing's been there for, all of humanity, but then I think it kind of got like refocused upon in, this into the 80s, and with a lot of different underground things, because so much stuff was kind of cookie cutter and handed to you. It's like a commodity, even music, like even rock music, or, so yeah, I just think it's like appealing to certain people, or you just fall into it, or both.
That's it. Yeah, I think DIY pre-existed any like cookie cutter, polished up like arena show shit. We were doing it ourselves way long ago. So how did you meet the guys in Moss Icon, and what was there's a lot of themes.
Is that the first band too? Moss Icon is.
Yeah, that was the first band I was
which
ever
is
in.
Pretty incredible. But how did you meet those guys?
Well, I met Jonathan Vance, the singer and lyricist, just like in high school. Like he went to a couple different high schools over the course of and I think he ended up like getting kicked out or something. He just got a GED. But when he was in the high school I went to, there weren't that many weird kids. Like whether you're like, there were like some skateboarders, like people into punk or metal, or even just like stuff that, I was into like more commercial stuff back then that was still kind of considered like alternative, like, like The Cure or something, or, or you like a lot, especially you meet a lot of girls who are more into that type of stuff. What I guess people call like now gothier stuff. But like Susie and the Banshees, like The Cult, all that stuff. So there was like only a small group of people who really knew about that stuff. Especially when you're talking like 83, 84, 85. So in school you'd kind of gravitate towards them. And that's just what happened with Jonathan. Honestly, I don't really remember how we crossed paths. But at some point, it wasn't so much that I had figured out, or even he had figured out, that he would want to sing or be a lyricist. But it was more just like, let's just start a band. It was more just like, let's have a gang. It was like that. And we didn't know what the fuck we were doing or anything. And it took a while to find, he knew Monica. And so, I was introduced to Monica through him. And we just kind of through people we knew at school and just in the area, we tried to find, I think it took longest to find Mark as a drummer. We tried out a few people, like this one metal guy, seemed like he was going to be really cool. We had this fucking Neil Peart drum set. But he just ended up, he was already a freshman in college. I guess we were still in high school. So he just ended up not really taking us seriously, or thinking that we were taking it seriously. One weird side note is there was one guy I didn't know, but a friend of mine was like, oh, I know this guy who's a drummer. He's in the school band. He would be into doing it. And he unfortunately passed away the day we were supposed to have our first rehearsal, which was really crazy. Apparently he had a heart condition since he was like a child or infant, and he was probably 16 at the time, and it just so that was kind of crazy. But then somehow I think Jonathan knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew Mark or something, and it just, so then he was the last piece of the puzzle.
So I'm curious as to, was the band built on friendships, or was it based on just making music?
Musical intent.
It was kind of more based on making music, or just trying to make something. There was definitely a friendship between me and Jonathan, and then of course we all became friends. And he introduced me to Monica before we really. It was probably half a year or a year before we really kind of got the shit rolling. So her and I even dated for a few months, but it was just more wanting to do it, and more acquaintances than friends. But a sort of a friendship developed. But we also all kind of drove each other crazy, and that was kind of part of the reason the band wasn't prolific or went on forever. Because we were all between 16 and 18 years old, I think, give or take a year. Jonathan might have even been 15 when we first started talking about it. So we were basically all in high school and sort of acquaintances, and we got to know each other better. We all started hanging out more in different social type settings, as we started playing, got to know each other. But we were also all just crazy teenagers.
Sure.
Sure.
So. And then when when was the choice to use? You guys, even from your cover art, there's a lot of substance. The icon,
right?
Which is some icon of fertility from somewhere.
Right.
What was the choice for all these concepts? And the song.
Yeah.
Guatemala, there's a lot of it.
It's mostly Jonathan, but in the course of us getting to know each other and becoming friends, we would talk about weird shit or whatever. And I was into a lot of weird stuff, but more in the sense that I just only knew a little about it or had heard of it, and I wanted to discover or learn more or just be more knowledgeable about it. And I'd always been drawn, like I was saying, even going back to activism, anti-war movement, all that shit. And there's, and even just the whole countercultural aspect of hippies, or before that, beatniks, bohemians, whatever you would consider weird artists. All that kind of shit always interested me. I just always gravitated towards it. But Jonathan, I think, he was more knowledgeable at that age about, he'd actually read things and was more knowledgeable about stuff, concrete stuff. A lot of the imagery was just sort of random things he would pick, oh, we should use this, or we should use this, and I was like, yeah, that's fucking cool, we should use that. And and at first, I wanted, but I also wanted to implement it into designs that were very insanely psychedelic and excessive, because even though our music wasn't really like that, I wanted to fuck with people and have imagery that was just really intense and But then I found like I didn't really know anyone to even do it, and like I didn't know how to do it myself, and it was mostly just working from limitations. So then I just went with the total opposite idea of like, let's just have the one fucking thing on the front with just black. Because like, I mean, I don't know how to do this other idea I have that's like, you know, I want it to be like 3-dimensional, like dragons and shit or something. So so then it was just like, well, fuck it, let's just like make it minimal but still good design. Because I was like, even at a young age, I was really into like design and just the way things look, even architecture, you know. So it was just like, we were just young kids, and for me, I had a glimpse of like higher concept shit or cooler shit. I didn't quite know how to get there, so we just did it the way we did it. And then once I started seeing, like, he would pick out an image, like the icon or something, and it was just like, it kind of spoke for itself. So then it's kind of all you needed. It was just like this thing.
I have a question that's, I think, along the same line. So, and you might know this, but Moss icon, from your perspective, what is that word? Like, what does it mean? I'm sure it's somewhere on Reddit somewhere. You might know.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, early on when we were doing the band, stuff like that, or even lyrical stuff, like, I would be like, what does this mean? And John would talk to me about, like, going to some crazy, like, tangent and talk about all this far out shit. But, I mean, I never really, like, the answer was, it was never answered, like, what does it mean? And, like, I kind of pretty quickly, like, realized I just don't even want to know. Like, I know what it means to me, and I feel my connection to it, but I prefer it to be, like, just, like, so out there that it's not, like, black and white. I could, like, give you, like, a sort of interpretation of what
whatever it means to you.
And I could also certainly get it from John. And I mean, you know, maybe there's even a way you can still catch up with him, but at the very least, like,
I think it's just as valid how you feel about it too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think it's just a cool ass name to begin with. So like when he said that, I was like, fuck yeah, there it goes. I mean, that's like where I was just like, you know, I mean, I'm sure just in my like crazy 18-year-old delusion, I was like, man, this name like is amazing. Like we can be like rock stars, you know, it's just so crazy. But it's just like the idea of an icon just being a symbol. It's a symbol for something. What is it a symbol for? I'm not sure. And then moss is just something that can be perceived as not necessarily old, but in the sense of nature and growth and, you know, the earth, nature and the earth. It's just something that's very, very old and very hidden. So it's sort of like this more mysterious thing that's also symbolic.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's usually something that's symbolic is like supposed to be conveying meaning. It's a symbol for something, like a stop sign is a symbol for, you know, you fucking stop. But in this sense, I always took it more as it's a symbol for something that's just there but unknown, obscure, but still full of meaning, and it's hard to actually discern. It's so primitive, it's so ancient, you know.
Yeah, and to your point, like not giving it a finite meaning allows for many different interpretations.
Right, and I mean, hopefully that's really what's occurred over the years, you know.
I would say that is what's happening.
Yeah.
I think the esotericism and the black has been advantageous. What is your reaction? I mean, I don't know how much you like read about Moss Icon on the internet, but there's a lot of people who really cite that as like the beginning of something much bigger.
I think that's really cool, and I think it's cool that there's still like some attention on a band that was that obscure, and like, you know, we didn't play that many shows, we didn't do that much, we weren't that prolific. It just was like a flash in the pan kind of. So I think it's really cool. I mean, I know that a lot of people cite it as like an early emo core or emo band, and like I never really thought of it that way. Like, but it also doesn't really bother me either. Sometimes I kind of jokingly say to people like the E word or something, because I feel like some people have definitely, I don't know, find it to be like cheesy or tacky or something, and I think over, you know, if you want to go from the 90s through the 2000s, like every half decade it's actually kind of a different thing what it's kind of like labeling, because you know by the 2000s you have like, you know, bands on the radio or just like that are huge like kind of pop bands or whatever, that are called emo, and it's like this Hot Topics thing and all, and like I mean I don't really, that doesn't bother me, I don't care, I just think it's kind of, if anything, it just adds more like weird fucking weirdness to it, which I like, you know, it's like makes it all more weird.
So what were some of the early Moss Icon shows like? Because you guys did a reunion in 2014? Or what
Yeah,
was that?
we actually played a couple shows in 2001.
Okay.
And then we played a couple times in like 2012 to 2014.
Sure. So yeah, describe
but-
like the earlier ones
Yeah,
compared to like the...
Well, I mean, the earlier shows were usually cool. I mean, honestly, like, you know, we weren't that. I mean, Monica was probably the best musician in the band. Mark became a badass drummer pretty quick. But I mean, they could be hit or miss, like either in the tightness of the songs or like the musicianship, or sometimes Jonathan was really into it, sometimes he wasn't into it. I mean, there were definitely people on different substances and, you know, or drinking. It wasn't like, you know, we didn't do that. I actually, like, I was probably the only person in the band who didn't do that stuff at the time, and it was just more because, like, just being a kid in high school, I was like, I had enough trouble keeping my sanity being sober. And the few times I, like, did shit, I was just like, damn, like, I don't know if I can, like, I could totally just do drugs and just become a total freak, but I'm not gonna be able to like maintain my sanity and like just finish high school, you know. So the shows were hit or miss. I think sometimes, even I guess if it's sort of was sloppy or sounded fucked up. I mean, there was the cool thing about it, and I mean Jonathan again was always sort of like the spearhead. We usually had like a really interesting effect on people. There were some shows where like people would just sort of sit down and just be like, what the fuck is this? Because they expected to come hear a band that sounded like more like a traditional punk or hardcore band. We would sometimes play shows where we get heckled because there's like skinhead dudes there who want to slam dance to a hardcore band, and they're just like, what is this shit? And so that was, I mean, to me that was cool. I was like into like anything like that. Whether it's people like sitting down, and there was also this like kind of current through the late 80s of like, I don't know, I feel like every decade, something from a couple decades before has like a slight resurgence. So like, there was definitely like a late 60s sort of like hippie thing to like some, like, I feel like some like sort of subcultures or just like groups of social networks back then. I mean, even like, I feel like there was even a resurgence of like, because I knew people who were in like to the Grateful Dead, and they would go see the Grateful Dead, and the Grateful Dead like toured just forever through the 80s. So I mean, we would even play shows where there'd be like people into that kind of shit there, but they were like into us, and like, I mean, that was cool to me, because I always liked the idea of it reaching different people, not just playing a show where there's like 500 like kids who are just all like, you know, into like fucking the same thing. And which that's fine too, but I mean that was just I don't know. I just have always been drawn more towards like weird, unique shit, or just like, you know, just something different, really. So the shows were like that. We played quite a few shows in DC, mostly like benefit shows for like Positive Force DC, who I think are still around, but they're like sort of an activist group. They would raise money for different organizations. So there we're like playing with like more established, well-known like DC bands, and it was interesting because I feel like some people were sort of like, oh, like that's weird. This band came out of nowhere from like Maryland, like Annapolis suburbs, Maryland. So I think that was kind of cool, like just to pop up out of nowhere and just be like a slightly different sort of recipe compared to like the normal mixes. You know, like I don't think there was like that much difference other than just, you know, the audience reaction would be different. I mean, we pretty much just always did our thing. And I mean, the other thing that was weird too is like Jonathan always, he got sick of songs really quick. Like we have like, I mean, in that period of time, we probably had a whole nother album's worth of songs that we just never recorded, but we played them live like a few times. Sometimes we'd play a song live we barely knew. A lot of times he changed lyrics, and in the later stuff, it got to where he could sort of kind of stream of consciousness more. So like it would just be like a different set of lyrics each time, you know. And I mean, there's even a few studio like as Afterwards the Words Still Ring. There's like a second version that's like way different.
And even Live Burnham, like on the lyric sheet, on the discography, I think it's different than what's actually on
It probably is. Yeah. So yeah, the shows were just pretty diverse, but usually cool and like I don't know. I mean, I definitely remember playing badly and feeling like, why am I doing this? Like I suck, you know. But I would always just keep doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. You're doing something really adverse, and I think you guys demanded a lot of patience from the listener, as far as like long build-ups and catharsis, and the spoken word thing was pretty new, I think.
I mean, I don't know. Like my father, you know, my father went to see us once, and I think like that aspect of it just. He was like, yeah, you all were kind of like the Doors. But, you know, of course, no organ. But it was like Jonathan's oration, you know. But, yeah, I mean...
What did your parents think? So, were they supportive?
Yeah, actually, I mean, Jonathan's father even... should I just get closer, maybe?
I'm thinking about bringing the camera closer. We have a new character. Do you guys want to drink?
I'm just thinking more for the audio.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
It sounded good thus far. Do you guys want a drink? I'll grab
I would love like just a small Pilsner. They probably have one in there.
Whatever.
They have all kinds of like fancy beers. But you can get a pretty simple, like, you know.
No, it's good.
Thanks, man. Jonathan's father, I remember, came to see us once too, which was kind of cool. And he seemed into it. I don't know about everyone else in the band, parent-wise. I mean, Mark's parents let us practice in their garage, so they were supportive in that way, which was cool. I think there was a period of time where we practiced at Monica's, and my mother like never really went to see us, but she thought it was cool that I was doing it, just because I mean she just figured I would anyway, because my father. But yeah, like my father went to see us, and he was like really into it and supportive. I mean, you know, in this, you know, he didn't buy us a new van or anything, but he was just supportive that I was doing that. And he also liked. The thing about my father is he played like music in the 60s and 70s, like kind of like from that era. But as it got to be into the 80s, even though he was like an older dude, he was in, like, I mean, I remember him like telling me like he went to see Devo, like, you know, like he was probably 40 or something, you know. So he was into the fact that what we were doing was kind of like weird, unique shit. And it was kind of heavy and just, you know. So he was totally like he understood like the whole punk rock movement and like counterculture, and he was cool with it, so.
Yeah, then when did it dissolve kind of, or when did it kind of maybe stop working as far as functionality?
Well, part of the whole chaotic process was, I think between 87 and 91, the band broke up and got back together like 3 to 6 times. I don't even really know for sure. But like there was times where Jonathan was living abroad. It was usually just Jonathan's bands, really, which at the time irritated me, but, we're still friends, and I just look back on it like it's just the way it was. It was cool, that's just how life was. But, so if he moved, or if he just wasn't, there were times when he got sick of it, he didn't want to do it. And then like a few months later, we'd start doing it again. In the course of that, one of the times we stopped, he started playing again with this guy, Alex, and then Mark, and they started this thing called Breathing Walker, which was sort of like a side, it's always considered a side project of Malsicon, which I guess it kind of was. But basically, over the course of them forming that band, everyone in Malsicon joined it. So then it's sort of like, it just became Malsicon with extra people. Because there was like extra drummer, there was a violin player. But then when Malsicon reformed, Alex became the second guitarist. Like the later stuff, like Guatemala, the kind of like, I guess some people consider mellower stuff. There's that later recording session, like Memorial, Guatemala, Moth. Alex is the second guitarist on that. But yeah, it was just like, there might have even been interpersonal disputes, like, fuck you, like, I'm not doing this, that kind of shit. But then, we would start back up. But then, like, around 91, we stopped playing, and I think, like, at that point, everyone was a little older, and maybe, like, going off to college type of stuff, and I just decided I just wanted to try to find people who would want to do it more as a full-time band. Like, okay, I want to really tour and really record, not necessarily get bigger in this huge dollar sign way, but just be able to be more prolific and at least maybe make enough money to be self-sustaining. So that was kind of like what ended up being the end in 91. And then when we played again, it was just sort of random, like crossing paths, and someone asked me if we would do something, and I asked everyone else. But I think us playing in like the 21st century, for me, was just more an opportunity to kind of, since it was really an obscure band that most people didn't really know what it was like, it was just an opportunity to kind of show, like, it's just like a weird rock band, really. If you want to call it this or that, the other thing, that's fine. Like, but really, it's just like some weird music, some weird shit, and so that was like cool to do that. But yeah, like some of the early shows were kind of magical, mostly because of John's output, not just vocally and the lyrics, the vibe, but the presence, and also the way people would interact with that. There were like, like I said, people sitting on the floor, like tripping out almost, like probably just in their minds. And then there'd be shows where there'd be like some kind of like drunk jock dudes, like, and John's drunk, and they're like in a weird huddle screaming into the mic, like just the weirdest shit. Like, yeah.
Totally bizarre. Sonically, though, I think, or would you say it enabled a lot of creativity? Also super dynamic, and especially thinking of like the strings on my bird. I think you were about to do a lot of really weird shit. How did that influence your future?
Really, I think part of what's important about what you're saying just then is that a lot of it just came from not really having a specific plan. When we first started, there were definitely a couple songs that had like a fast hardcore tempo and more like cruising chords, and or even just sounding like punk, even in like a 70s New York way or whatever. And I think we were just finding our footing, our bearings. And I had just learned.
Were a lot bigger than I thought they would be. I brought the smallest one I did.
Awesome, thank you. But a lot of it was just like I had just started teaching myself to play guitar, like in '86. So it was just like my cousin was like, "Oh, this is how you form a bar chord," and that's the only lessons I ever had. So then I just started moving my fingers around and finding weird chords, and then I started playing like parts, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. I should try to have that be part of a song instead of just like da 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 da." And then I would just show it to Jonathan and then like Mark and Monica, and we would just form songs, you know. But almost every song was a different process, kind of, and like a different thing. I mean, like I think I've even mentioned this before in some kind of interview or something, like with "I'm Back," which was like an earlier song. So like, you know, the other songs on that first 7-inch, I think to people sound a little more like traditional DC hard, like post-hardcore or whatever.
Yeah, like Rocket, Familiar, Precise, those all are very like, traditional.
Right. So, but like literally with "I'm Back," like John and I were on the phone, and I think I was just like playing him shit I'd come up with, and he was like, try to come up with like he's something like Sabbath, like Sweet Leaf or something, or, you know. So that was literally "I'm Back" is just like so blatantly just, and it doesn't really sound like Black Sabbath, but it was just like, yeah, like my idea of like barely being able to play guitar and Jonathan's on the phone, like, you know, and like I just come up with this thing, and, you know, so it was like weird processes like that. A lot of it jamming, yeah. And I think that, especially like the later stuff, the music would even be more improvisational. So then the stream of consciousness lyrics with that.
Super. And then so you were pretty serious about like continuing music, wanting something consistent.
Yeah.
Is that how Armageddon?
Yeah, that's how you always started. I just was looking for people, and I mean, I was still around Annapolis. There weren't that many people. I mean, there were a lot of people in bands playing music, but most of it just wasn't like what I was trying to do or interested in. But I met Brooks was actually like from Baltimore, and he was in a band, but I met him. I think I was putting on a show in Annapolis. I feel like maybe one of the bands was Econochrist. That's like the only band I can remember, because I always really liked them. But I think like maybe Brooks had been trying to put on a show, like organize a show in Baltimore, and we ended up maybe combining the show as the one show in Annapolis or something. But after the show, we were just like, we should start a band. And I don't think I'd even heard him or seen him drum yet. I might have seen the band he was in, but I didn't really realize how like cool and good of a drummer he would become, or was already kind of becoming. And it took us a while to find like other people. I think we even jammed one night with a couple guys in the band Hoover. Yeah, Joe and Fred. I think Joe and Fred like actually played with Brooks and I one night. You know, and I think this is when Hoover first started too. And then we just ended up like, I already knew Colin. Colin was someone who sort of would go see Moss Icon, and he was around, the singer. And then his cousin Anthony played bass, and we just sort of put it together that way. And part of my appeal, especially with Colin, was like he was just more of like a unique kid. Like he wasn't really like into a specific thing. Like he was into all kinds of different music, even in high school. And he wrote. He was like a poet. So that was sort of like, I kind of like Moss Icon. At least for me, it's sowed the seed of trying to always do shit unique as much as possible, or just as weird as possible, but still like in the vein of what you're trying to do. So yeah, it was just kind of the same thing. It wasn't really people I knew. It was just I was looking for musicians, and I met these people, or kind of, in the case of Colin, kind of knew him already, just as an acquaintance, and just took it from there. That's basically it.
And then speak of like, I know a little bit, but Vermin Scum, the label, and the guy from the Hated, right?
Right.
Which was like one of your, I don't want to say idols, but one of them.
Yeah, they were definitely like peers that I looked up to. Like, they were a little older. Kenny Hill, he was the drummer of the Spastic Rats, and then he moved on to be the drummer of the Hated. And he had already started that label to put out the Spastic Rats record, and then he put out a Hated record. So I think they had only put out those two records. Oh, and like a couple tapes. But when I met him and we won, I was like, well, Moss Icon should just put out our own 7-inch, at least to start. I was hoping we'd get hooked up with the label later if we ever got like more, just established. So I just started asking Kenny, like, what do you do? Like, I mean, where's the record made? Do you have like... So he just gave me info, just very like logistical type shit. Like, this place presses records, like blah, blah, blah. But he had a bunch of Hated records sitting around, and he hadn't really done a lot to try to sell them. Because I guess the record came out, but then the band... I mean, the Hated also like would break up under for a certain amount of time while people were off at school. I think when they first started college, maybe. So the No More We Cry 7-inch was out. But I mean, I noticed in his, I would hang out at his house, and Kenny had a few boxes of the records laying around, a few hundred. So basically, once I pressed the first 7-inch, the Moss Icon record, or had it pressed, I mean, there was a little interest in us, and it was also easy to like get a little help from Discord, just with distribution, and like Ian Mackay gave me a little advice as well around then. And then for a few years, Kenny and the Hated were doing some stuff. They released a few more Hated records, so I helped them a little. I mostly just helped them with. I had acquired new DIY distributor connections, or just someone, I'll sell 20 records at a show, like in my town or my country, like a lot of people in Europe. So it was just kind of like that, sharing contacts, and and then like I just started like putting out stuff or helping bands put out stuff, because there were other bands from around Maryland, a few other bands that were younger than us even, but they were into us, they were into the Hated. So like they sort of helped us, to get it a little more established, because they were like, oh, well, would you put out our record? I was like, well, we're not like a real label, we don't have any money, but if you want to put out a record, you can just put the logo on the damn thing, and I'll tell you some people who will distribute it, or I can send them some copies for you. So it was just super cottage industry, totally just by this, seat of our pants or whatever. It's like never that organized or anything. And I mean, over the course of the 90s, there were a few other releases, and it was always just like a band that was into what had happened before, and they're like, oh, we want to be on that, and I'd be like, well, I can't help you monetarily, sorry, but I can help you sell some records. I can give you the logo, so it's just sort of like being part of a collective.
And how do you think that gave you solace? Like from being a kid in high school and not having like, you gravitated towards all the misfits or the people listening to the Cure. How do you think having that like belonging community helped you? Like, can you imagine not having that community?
I think it was definitely a positive thing. I've always looked at it as still like really kind of broad and a little obscure. Like, I mean, a lot of the bands that maybe I helped with the label Verb and Scum, or even just like I didn't even, over the course of years, I didn't even keep in touch with Kenny until like recent years. So, you lose. So it was never really a tight like social or family thing. It was more just like a more broad umbrella. Because I think people, if they dug like a Hated record or a Moss Icon record or UOA, then they would just be like, oh, well, like, I feel like I'm a part of this. Because it is almost like the misfit toys of bands. Because, it wasn't like a super established label, and it wasn't real prolific bands. They were all usually bands that, were kind of like part-time, existed briefly, and then they didn't anymore. So I see what you're saying, but I feel like it was just a little more abstract than that.
Yeah,
not as cohesive.
Okay.
What about more generically, though? DIY in general, do you feel like it helps?
I think, because we grew up, he's the only person I know that listens to this type of music.
Right.
There was none of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, even on a really small scale, there was definitely that you would meet a new person and you had something in common. And, of course, I mean, definitely some of the bands that were on that label, once I was sort of like administering it and just allowing like people to just kind of get under the umbrella, you know, they gravitated towards our thing and probably a few other underground things, but they never really like, I don't think we're part of the whole big scene either. So it was definitely like people from their own little like niches or smaller scenes. And I think that was one of the consistent factors with any of the records on that label.
Gotcha. And so, thematically, just given your listening history of 60s, 70s rock, which is super anti-war, super anti-establishment, those themes are seen in Moss Icon. And I think you probably have those beliefs too, right?
Yeah.
Were you an angry kid growing up at the world regarding that stuff, and how do you find an outlet for it?
Yeah, I think I definitely was. Probably more so than most of the other people in the band. But I mean, you know, I'm sure everyone was to some degree. I mean, the interesting thing about Mark was, I mean, I was already into a lot of like 70s reggae, and he was super into reggae. Like super into reggae. I mean, it's even noticeable in his drumming. He probably listened to reggae way more than like punk rock or rock music. At least for like that certain period in high school. And, you know, obviously like a lot of that is very like revolutionary, anti-establishment music. So, yeah, I mean, that was just always sort of like running through our veins, I think. I spaced on the specifics of the question.
Yeah, you're fine. But like growing up, how has that changed, and how have you found it?
Well, as I've gotten older, I'm really fucking jaded. I mean, I'm pretty pessimistic and jaded, but also not like, it doesn't necessarily make me miserable. I mean, I guess part of the DIY thing is always like, especially like back then, it was just like, you're just like a kid, you don't have many outlets, so you have to almost find an outlet or create an outlet. And I feel like that's always just been the case with like fighting, you know, the man or fucking any kind of like negative systematic like entity that's like detrimental to humanity or people or the earth or whatever. It's just like there's not, you know, a majority of humans on the planet are not really fighting the good fight, you know. And I mean, I'm not even knocking that. It's like a lot of people are just trying to survive, but I feel like maybe as I got older and was doing music less so, I never became less concerned about issues or like, you know, I think about all this stuff all the time. I have since I was a kid, you know, so, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, it's hard to not be super doom and gloom because shit's so fucked up, but you just have to like focus in on like the people or the forces that are actually like trying to do something. You know? I mean, honestly, I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways it's kind of past the tipping point for a lot of things. Like, I think like we're fucked in a lot of ways, but I also don't think that's a reason to just like start going around like, you know, burning down people's houses and killing everyone, you know, or just being insane. You know, it's like you just have to figure out your outlet and figure out what you can do, or just, you know, figure out, I guess, just how you can be the best you can be and remain as sane as possible, because it's, you know, it's even in like, and it's funny because even in like a American city like Baltimore, I mean, I currently work with like, you know, like a lot of lower income, like inner city African American folks. And I even had one of them in a conversation recently just say, like, you know, like people don't realize, even poor people in America, they don't realize actually how much better they have it than billions of really fucking poor people in other parts of the world. And I think most people just don't think of that. And it was just cool to hear that from someone, you know. and I guess my point is that being the case, you still have to just like, I guess, do the best you can. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And like he and I, we worked with kids with autism in New York.
Oh.
So we get a lot of low income families. And I worked in the office with 2 to 3 girls with autism. So
Cool.
Yeah. What do you do? What do you do outside of music?
Well, I mean, as far as like activist type work, I did a lot more of it.
Job.
Yeah. No, I'll get to that too. No, I was just gonna say it's kind of funny because like the activist type stuff I did, it was mostly actually when I was like younger and like in Moss Icon and like in high school and out of just early 20s, and I did become a little jaded and early on, and but I've tried to do stuff off and on over the years. But job wise, I've just always. For years, because I was always trying to do music, and I didn't do well in school. I never really there was never really money for me to go to college, and I guess I never was like into it enough to like work my ass off going to 2 jobs to get through it myself, because I just wanted to do music really. So I just like did that. So I've always kind of had like sort of bullshit jobs. But, as I got older, I'd find myself falling into these weird niches. They were still like kind of low paying jobs, but it was like, oh, well, I'd learned how to like be a, okay mechanic. So I started getting jobs like that. But they were kind of unique. I was like, I worked for a guy who restored like vintage, like classic cars. And then I worked on I lived in rural Maryland for like 5 years on a property. It was kind of like a farm. But they had a lot of equipment and machinery there, so I was working as an apprentice to like diesel mechanics who worked on like, tractors and like off-road equipment and dump trucks, crazy shit. So I guess I've always kind of had like sort of like blue collar jobs that were like, but kind of for a slacker or an artist, like so.
Provides in a free time.
Yeah, and like I kind of have I'm basically just like I work as like a facilities maintenance person at the Art Institute here. So it's sort of just working with my hands similarly, nothing very high paying. But I feel like, the whole like DIY thing and working with your hands, there is some kind of weird connection. Like not even anything I consciously have really thought about. But if I like kind of reflect back on it now, like speaking to you, it's just like, yeah, like, I ended up, wanting to tour in a band, so I got a van and I had to fix it, and then that ended up being like actually leading me to jobs like employment. So it's kind of interesting, Yeah.
As far as media consumption, other than music, what do you find? Movies, books.
And this can be old too, like kids to now or whatever you like.
Well, it's funny because I was like, I kind of reconnected with the drummer of the Great Unraveling. His name's Randy in like recent years because like we did that band in like the mid '90s. But he lives like behind me literally right now. I happened to move into an apartment. He already owned a house like in the alley behind me. But in the process of talking in recent years, he was kind of like, yeah, I didn't realize how much of like a film nerd you are. So I'm actually really into like film, cinema, movies. Usually like, could be weirder or avant-garde type shit.
We like that shit too. Give us a couple.
Tarkovsky, we love, like Stalker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even like, for me, it's like even, like Apocalypse Now is probably my favorite movie, or one of my favorite movies.
Dude, one of the best.
And I think part of it is I saw that movie when I was like 10. So I was really young, and it had like a huge impact on me. I think it had maybe been released for a year or two, but my cousin, like, once again, my older cousin had this influence on me. My cousin and his friend, who were like, they were probably like 17 or 18 at the time, 16. They were going to see it, and they just took me, and they were just like, "Oh, it's a war movie." Yeah, but I almost feel like it affected me way more than them, and I was just like, "Fuck," like this is intense because it's like, yeah, it's about war, but it's also about like humanity and like it's like this high art, crazy shit. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the more. It's not, Blue Velvet isn't super obscure, but like, and like, of course, yeah, like Kubrick. I remember, 2001. I remember seeing that. But then I even like just there's just like weird shit I've heard about over the years, but like I didn't even like. It's like you couldn't even like have access to it until YouTube existed, just like weird like Jess Franco movies, John Rowland, like I guess they made like weird like really low budget like I think one of them was French, one of them was from Spain, Jess Franco, just like really low budget like vampire movies that are like bordering on like soft porn, but it's like super artsy or whatever. I don't know.
Like Argento, like some.
Like his first couple of movies, or some of his earlier movies, like are just awesome. I think.
There's some modern ones that you've seen. As of late.
Like Lars von Trier by any chance?
I've seen a few of his movies. Yeah.
I like it.
It's really like I don't really like. I'm not like a huge sponge. I don't absorb enough all the time, so it's really kind of random. So there'll still be something probably I've missed that I should know about, and then there's like stuff that actually like one of my favorite movies in recent years is Mandy.
Cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's sort of like the director is. I mean, of course, Nicolas Cage can be awesome. He's crazy or whatever, but if you should check it out because the director he also made a movie before that, Beyond the Black Rainbow, that you might have heard of.
I have heard of it.
And it's just it's just the movies like that. That's what I mean. There's other movies like that I'm sure I've missed. I saw the name because there's just so much shit nowadays, and then there's so much new shit, and then there's just all the old shit that you can like reassess now. Even with music, like so many bands are getting like proper reissues and all, and it's just like, God, how do you keep up? But so yeah, check out his name's Panos Cosm. His last name's Greek. I'm probably saying it wrong. Cosmatos. His father was a director, and he made like Rambo: First Blood and a couple other movies like that. And then his son made Mandy and Beyond the Black Rainbow. But those are probably my two favorite recent movies. There's a couple of like really obscure, low-budget horror movies that I thought in recent years that were pretty good. I liked. One was called. I can't remember. I have to text it to you. But yeah, I mean, there's so much shit out there.
You ever heard of a movie called Begotten?
Yeah.
The black and white.
I haven't seen it, but yeah.
It's fucking.
No, wait. So wasn't that kind of like from the late 80s, early 90s?
Early 90s. Super low budget, shot in 1922.
I have seen that.
Okay.
I have seen that. Yeah. No, that I love that because that was like. That bordered more on being like even non-linear. It was like almost like some Kenneth Anger shit or something. Because I really like Kenneth Anger too. So like Lucifer Rising, and, Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. Like he's one of the early pioneers of super avant-garde cinema. But yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of more of a film nerd than a music nerd, honestly. It's just so immersive, It's like I don't know. You can just go into like your own world, which is almost like kind of counter to like some of my other views on the world, because it's like I also feel like you need to be like in reality so that you can try to make it as unshitty as possible, but at the same time. It's like I just like crazy tripped out movies.
Gaspar Noé?
Huh?
Yeah, the irreversible climax.
What did we just see?
We just saw him.
I hated it.
Yeah, we didn't like it. It was because I work with dementia. He just put out a movie centered on dementia. And I thought it was very different than what I've seen.
Oh, okay. So he's the guy who made Irreversible.
Yeah, the French guy.
Yeah. The one I haven't seen by him yet, though, it's sort of about a DMT trip and someone dying. Yeah, like
I don't like that one.
That's
okay.
so excessive, so hedonistic.
Yeah.
And it's like the most popular one. It's like
Right.
It's so for
I haven't seen that. Man, I actually like there's a movie theater right near here, the Charles Theater, and like when Irreversible came out, I went to see it, and it was just like me and like 4 like young women who were probably like went to the art school, like so they're like 19 or 20. I was just like, God damn, I hope they know what they're about to get themselves into. I felt kind of bad, like I was almost about to say like, oh, this is gonna be a fucked up movie, because I had already someone describe it to me. But I mean, they made it through.
To touch on what you spoke about a little earlier, like the advantages of escapism and where it turns big and negative, right? Because I love movies, so do we.
Yeah.
But I can even find, I know that there's a line where it's probably excessive, it leads to maybe stagnancy.
Well, I guess this is the way I look at it, and I don't know. I don't want to come off as sounding like a snob or a dick or something, but like there's tons, you can go see like superhero movies and all this mass culture shit, and it's like, like whatever if that's your thing. But I feel like, weird, maybe what more well-made movies or obscure movies or fucking just weird, fucked up movies. I just think it makes you think more about life and reality. So it is like you're going in to watch a movie for 2 hours, and it's sort of like this escape. But especially if it's just weird and dealing with all this shit, or even it's just like visually weird and artistically weird, I just feel like it makes you think more about other things and the way things are interconnected and the things that might not seemingly be interconnected. Whereas if you just go see like an Iron Man movie, it's like, I don't know, it's just for me personally, it just never really makes me think about other shit, It's just like you're immersed in that thing, and it's that thing, and then it's like over, and it's like, I feel like you don't really take anything with you out of it, So
Yeah, I mark it down. Like, it's so diluted. It's very just like visual stimulation.
Yeah.
Especially now, too. Like, they're just making CGI. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I almost feel like it's sort of, and I mean, you could even say this about any movie or any media, but it's like a form of mind control, I mean, even like there's like a new Top Gun movie or something. I mean, like
Fast and Furious.
The Pentagon, yeah. Well, the Pentagon, it's just the Pentagon. I mean, this is like a proven fact. It's not some kind of like crazy conspiracy shit. Like the Pentagon, like has influence on like movies that are made, and like and then you can even get into product placement and all that shit.
Yeah, what the public consumes.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you watch a fucked up crazy movie about a cult or a serial killer or something. I mean, it's a horror movie. It's fucked up. But at least, like, for me, I just, like, start to think about different aspects of humanity, society, like, culture, life.
This is a more mainstream one, but what did you think about? Did you watch Parasite?
I didn't see it yet. I really want to. Like,
it's pretty. I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I mean, like it's everyone has said it's phenomenal. I just sometimes I'm weird. Sometimes like it'll take me like a few years to catch up on a band or a movie because I'm just on my weird own time zone and just reality. So yeah. But I want to check that one out, definitely.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That was actually
that's really, really modern, but maybe 3 years from now you'll love it.
Which one?
Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, no, yeah, like I definitely want to see that because everyone's just saying how good it is.
And the thing, it's like, it actually is pretty good. It's phenomenal.
The movie theater right here, the Charles, like they do these like revivals where they'll show like old movies, and I just went for my friend's birthday. They had the Warriors, like movie.
Warriors come out to play.
And like I hadn't actually seen that since I was like a kid, and it was like so good. It was cool.
Cool. Then I think like last question.
I'm curious as culturally where you lie now. Like, who are your like friends? Kind of. Is it outside of the DIY scene now?
You know what's? I feel like most of the people I know I mean, if you look at it as like a broad, like web, like a spider web, I feel like most people I know have like touched on at some point where there's like, it's like a broad social network or broad like contingent of people, but there's like threads that run through. Like, I mean, I'll even meet people I haven't seen in years or I never really met, but like years ago, like there was some kind of connection. So I think most of the people I know now have been involved in music in some way or art or something artistic and are creative people. I mean, it's just like, I think it's just something that sticks with people. Even when people, you know, once they get like, they have mortgages, kids, careers, you know, I'm probably more of a weirdo than a lot of people I know. Like, as far as like, I say weirdo, like I'm just not like a stable adult. Like, I don't have like a lot of money in the bank. I don't own property. I never even had a fucking credit card until the past couple of years. And you know, so most of my friends and acquaintances or peers are like more stable maybe. But there's still like people who kind of at least have like part of an ear to the ground for like creative stuff. And
We're weirdos too, man. We felt like that ourselves. But one of the reasons we're doing this is like, you have, whether or not you think so, you've found a way to like domesticate your life, right? And, like, what are the struggles of that? But also, have you found any comfort and stability and consistency? And like, how was that transition from the weird ass boss icon?
What did it feel like to get a credit?
Yeah, because we're going through the same.
yeah. Well, like I kind of said earlier, I was just like, I'm a lifer. I just want to do music. So I just kept going through trying to be in bands that were like more prolific and consistent and full time. And before I knew it, I kind of was like, well, it's been like 20 some years and that never really worked out. And like, I mean, it's like, it's okay. But then I just start thinking, well, what I probably should have done this whole time is had two parallel things going, where I just was always trying to do that, but also try to have like something else, not even to fall back on, like, because people always say that, like, oh, you know, like you're yeah, but more just like if I would have tried to do two things in parallel, so they could have sort of been a stabilizer to each other. So in recent years, I've just mostly just been trying to like pick up the pieces. Just like, okay, how do I like, you know, kind of like have the rest of my life not be a total shit show, you know? So
I think that's a good segue to talk about drugs or non-stability.
right.
Maybe it's not drugs, but what is that? What was the opposite of finding?
Right. Well,
what was it prior to?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, like, occasionally I talk to a couple of my friends who are more, like, you know, established as adults. And I'm like, sometimes I joke with them, I feel like I'm the most fucked up person I know who's not a drug addict. Like, I never had an addiction problem, luckily, you know, because, like, my mother definitely did, and my father did a lot of shit. My mother actually, I mean, she's mostly, like, just alcohol, but so, and then I kind of, like, in some ways I've looked at it like trying to keep doing these things that were, you know, you're always kind of like one step forward, 3 steps back. That almost became sort of like an addiction, you know? And that's kind of going back to what I said earlier about I really should have tried to do it so where I had my creative pursuits and more like, you know, trying to attain stability, be like these parallel endeavors as opposed to just dumping all my time and energy into the one thing. But, I mean, the thing about addiction is, I mean, I have a really good friend who's, you know, a drug counselor. And so I hear, like, crazy stories and shit. And it's just like, I mean, you know, if someone needs insulin and if someone needs heroin, like, why are they really? I'm just like, I'm going off on a soapbox trip now. I don't even know if it's answering your question.
I think you. I like it.
But it's just like, people hate criminals. They don't want people doing crimes. Like if someone's a fucking junkie and needs their shit, just like make it so they can get their shit. I mean, they've done this in other countries, but then it gets into like who in these like what weird individuals in these high positions of power are actually monetarily benefiting off of this shit, Like what the fuck was the Afghan war, Yes, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, I mean I could babble for 10 hours about this shit, but you know what I'm saying. So, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Like Amsterdam, legal sex work.
Right. But I don't know. A lot of things can be addictive, and it's just I don't know. I guess I've been lucky to like not lose control. I guess but it's tough. It's tough being a human in this day and age, I think. But I mean, I think for a lot of people, like music or art is a way to keep your sanity. And I mean, I think just coming back to like, I think the gist of why you're doing this interview, like, the early bands I was in, especially Mouse Icon, it was like, you're a kid or an adolescent or a teenager in suburban America. And it's just like, I mean, I guess a lot of kids just like get into these like tracks where they just kind of do shit their parents approve of or like would want them to do. And I'm not even knocking most of that. I mean, that's fine. But if you don't feel right in any of those conceived like routes and you're trying to find your own way, I mean, like, like that might be what you end up doing, the music thing or whatever it is, like, and I mean, that's just kind of what we ended up doing. And out of that just came this random, like, creative output that has seemed to have like an effect on people. And that's cool. And that means to me, that's cool. It's just like what I would not have expected it. It wasn't like, there wasn't a conscious plan. It was just out of the blue. It just happened,
To that point exactly. Boss IQ has impacted kids stuck in suburbia and given us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just out of all the bands that were maybe more prolific and bigger, I feel like at least there was like this one that was sort of like off on the side there, and it's like a little different, a little weirder, a little more unique. And that, I mean, I feel like that's a great accomplishment just because, it's just kind of like food. Like when you try different food or it's a different recipe or something just is different and it really appeals to you. It's just like, I guess it just broadens like, I don't know, your horizon. I mean, it broadens like your interpretation of reality or something. It's just like what you have access to, what you can do. So, I mean, to me, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fucking badass.
Yeah. I think that does it.
I have, this is the kind of baseline one. So, you've obviously found some solace outside of music. What do you recommend to the kids who don't have that artistic outlet? They're not able to channel that angst or anger or whatever you want into something sonic, or maybe even artistic. Like, what's the go-to? Tough question.
Well, I mean,
because you got lucky, over the years you found you
it's. I mean, this kind of goes. I mean, for me, this comes back to just it's difficult dealing with reality. It's difficult keeping your mental health, and I mean, I definitely haven't been the most happy or whatever person for much of my life, and I think that's something we all deal with to some extent. Yeah, I feel like there is you have to jump over this little barrier of figuring out what appeals to you and also figuring out what's just available to begin with. For me, it just always comes because it's funny, the DIY thing for me. I got into music and music just became almost an addictive thing itself, and I just kept pursuing it. But I just remember thinking what are the main things in life people need, like, food, shelter, energy? What about like looking at those things as needing to be produced in DIY ways? And I mean, I think over the decades since the 80s, there's like, even for instance, organic farming, organic gardening. I mean, that's all like, especially with the internet, more people realize they can do shit like that. Self-sufficiency, basically, yeah. Just like, it's like the extreme is people who live off the grid and all that. I just feel like looking towards anything where you can just produce your own necessities, whether it is just art, like what you need to hang on your wall, or it's energy, or it's food, or it's like, acquiring property, which, and this gets, it's so complicated because like how overpriced is most property on the fucking planet, and out of the price range of most people. But I think that it's for people to kind of keep their stability and their sanity, if they can find something where they're just trying to produce or create something that they can utilize themselves in their lives that they need. And maybe it's not a necessity. I mean, because, art isn't necessarily a necessity, but food is. And I feel like if you look at all those things, it's sort of part of a larger holistic, like, tapestry. I don't know what the fuck, but it's all interconnected, and just really just finding it. It's just like finding what you relate to. I mean, because it's even with people, like when you talk about there aren't that many people that you found to connect with on like music or whatever levels. So it's just like, I guess like it's like the internet should make that easier, but in some ways it's probably not. And that's what's so weird about this day and age. It's like the internet should make it easier, but there's so many like layers of shit that have made it harder, and you have to like figure out how to like get through that shit.
I did fuck up the Polaroids. I didn't get the lighting, so let me take 2 more. I'm really sorry.
No, that's what I'm about to do. My dad bought half an acre in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, awesome! So, do you have a Colorado area code?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I recognized.
Yeah. But I'm going to build a self-sufficient shelter.
That's awesome.
That's kind of the plan.
Yeah.
Living in New York, it showed me.
So you live in New York City?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have for the last year and a half.
Okay, cool.
But it showed me how reliant we all are. It's an instant gratification. I think a lot comes out of like hard work. You've been working for something, and then
Yeah. I know it's just tricky because
I can't buy it. I was lucky enough. My dad.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I inherited a little money from my grandmother a few years ago, and it was really only enough where I was trying to find something out in a rural area that was the right thing that I could afford. And my main criteria was like I was trying to find something that at least already had a well. Like I didn't care if there was like a building or if the building had fallen down, but I was hoping I could at least have a well. And like I just didn't find the right thing. That's all. It was just like.
Was this the property? I mean, I saw the earthquaker.
Oh, that was that house was the house I lived in I told you I lived in rural Maryland when I worked as a mechanic. Yeah, the guy that owned the company I worked for owned 2 houses on the property, so he would just like rent them. Yeah, so that was just a house I was renting. His nephew actually was like my housemate. So, and the dog was not my dog. It was, yeah. It was my housemate's dog.
Okay.
But yeah, that house was cool. It was like back in, I guess, the 40s, 30s, like Sears, like Roebuck and Company, you could buy a house. It was a Sears house. So it came like, I guess it came like prefab certain pieces, so it's like early prefab. But it's called a Sears house. I mean, you can like look that up. But there's like all different designs, but it came from like Sears Roebuck, which is kind of like it would be like an Amazon house now.
Yeah, that's fucking great job, man. Yeah, it was awesome. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Good.
And we're gonna have some of the best B roll out.
Well, yeah, you're the first person that I think shares cinematic.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
cool.
normally it's like, we get great stuff like anime and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
there's some actual movies that it's just, and for the Moss icons, it's just pretty fucking badass. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really appreciate when people have an interest now in Moss Icon, because I think it's usually they pick up. I mean, obviously, like it's connected to like these subgenres like post-hardcore, emo, and like this broader musical or even indie rock, and there was like the DC scene and all that. But it just interests me when people pick up on the fact that it also has like these weird like subfacets that are off to the side, like just like you were saying, the icon, the imagery, the name, the lyrics, the presentation, the musical structure. It's just like. It's like I mean, so little of that was really planned.
I can tell that. But
So as much like anytime I feel like a total just like fuck up in life, I'm just like, but that shit. Like I don't even know what happened or how it happened, but that is like I can die happy whenever I die.
and you should. I mean, it's cited online.
And it's not like it even obviously it never made money or anything, but the one thing that's interesting about the modern era, say for instance just with Temporary Residence reissuing it, it's interesting when like someone like that recognizes and they're like, oh well, like I want to give you another chance to do this better, at least as far as the whole process of getting it out to people. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the Numero group.
Yeah.
With Indian Summer.
Yeah, they just contacted me and they basically want to do like similar type stuff with like the other bands.
Very cool. Oh, yeah. We
So-
spoke to Indian
What does that entail exactly?
Basically just like reissue, like say like the ULA stuff isn't really even available, and it wasn't handled well. Like I mean, Kill Rock Stars is still a label, and they were always like good to us on a base level. Like they told us like the finances, and I mean, I don't know. We get like I might get like $100 every couple of years or something like that, but at least they keep track of it. But say for instance the 7-inch that Jade Tree put out, like I think Jade Tree is like owned by Epitaph now or something. So it's just not really. I mean, part of the thing with like Numero is they're like I mean this stuff's out there, but like you're not benefiting from it financially as well as you could be, and the only difference is it's just not being handled well in an organized manner. And so I might make a couple $100 instead of $10 if it's handled better. So that's like the money doesn't really matter, but it's cool that it'll probably get to more people. Because on the planet on any given day there's billions of people, so there's probably at least a few thousand or more people who haven't heard of one of these bands, and if they had it presented to them, they would be like, oh, this is fucking cool. I dig this. Like I can connect to this, like probably the way you all have. So I just think it's like it's good that people in this day and age are offering to like it's just kind of like resurrecting it and doing it better. So, because I mean, we had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, I do remember thinking like, if one of the bands I did became a little more like established and prolific, like there were, bands even like labels like Touch and Go or like labels like that back then. Like, some of the bands or Sub Pop, I mean, I have one of my old friends who's still like an old friend, Andrew. He was kind of like friends with the Hated. He was in like the pre-Hated band. When he was around, he would go like see Moss Icon a lot. He was just like one of our friends. But back in the late 80s, he kind of took it upon himself to act as sort of like a manager to try to get Sub Pop interested in Moss Icon or the Hated. And for whatever reason, they said no. But what was cool is they recognized that it was cool. So they distributed some records for us out in Seattle and around there, So I mean, But I think it's just like, say for instance, if Moss Icon had been touring a lot and really prolific, you know, a label like that might have been interested back then. And you know, you know, like I've had someone tell me for a fact they know, and I can trust them. They're like, you know, Thurston Moore has Moss Icon records. Like he was into that shit. He was into weird shit. I've even had people say like, I'm sure Kurt Cobain like knew about that shit. Like whether it's true or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the point is, like, in the early '90s, there started being this thing where like these really obscure things and these really like well-known things, they started like crossing paths in weird ways.
You see this all the time with counterculture. Like
Yeah.
even in the late 60s, early 70s, the hippie movement, which was counterculture, and underground turned into, I mean, you get the
Right.
peace logo on a lunch
Yeah,
box.
and you know, Woodstock was huge,
And even
but
The Cure, right? What was like minute groups of
Right.
high school kids listening to it.
Yeah.
Now, like all the goth, like it's
Yeah,
like pop.
it's very popular,
goth, right?
or even like I mean, that band Turnstile is from here, and I guess they're huge. I don't know much about
I
them.
don't
Very, like-
like one song by Tonie.
But they're like, very like, and
I guess it's like something that I guess it's stuff that is more accessible
It
to
is.
broader people.
hard.
Yeah, but it's just like
They do them right after.
it's interesting that they can be so big, but they're basically like doing something that is considered like, you know, part of this, you know, these like subgenres. So
They try to. I think it's they want to make it as marketable as possible, which is where Moss Icon is.
Well, and that's why I think it's when you say like you were, or Moss Icon wasn't so prolific. I think the fact that it didn't tour a lot and that it, you know,
yeah, I mean
makes it more
that's kind of
It's
cool.
the enigma of Moss.
Yeah, it's like the mystique. Yeah.
What I am curious. So, do you know the band Seisha?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just
They're
So-
they're doing a reunion.
toured and they sold out more than they've within seconds. 4 shows in a row. Like
Yeah.
would Moss Icon ever do something like that? Like just to like almost get a gauge of like how popular you are, because it like bewilders me that we interview some of you guys and it's like, oh yeah, like it definitely had an impact, but then it's like I think if you said, hey yeah, we're gonna go play a show, you would be like, oh fuck, we just sold out 10 venues. Like,
Yeah,
fuck,
I mean, my theory on that is like, I think it kind of depends on like how it's handled and organized and all. I mean, because a band like Seisha honestly was probably more popular than Moss Icon in a way. Like they probably toured more and played to more people and probably sold more records or made more records. And I feel like that.
shows 50 people.
Occupancy.
Yeah.
And that, they just saw the 5 passes.
Yeah.
And they were like,
Yeah, I know. I've definitely noticed in recent years, like bands, like, I mean, even just like say Jawbreaker, you know, like, I mean, that's like a huge deal. And I mean, I quit following them probably a record or two before they got on a major in the '90s. And then, you know, they don't exist for so many years, and then they like come back and they're playing these huge venues. So my guess is that it has a lot to do with like how it's being handled or organized or managed now. Because I mean, when Moss Icon did play in 2012, 2014, it was still just like, you know, the guy Timmy that was doing Chaos and Chaos, he was just like, oh, would you all play a show? And it was just still super DIY.
spur of the moment.
Right. But I mean, honestly, like, I mean, the guy I've been talking to at Numero is just in our initial like 2-hour conversation about trying to figure out where our heads were with like what we could do. He was like, you know, if like any of your old bands or UOA or Moss Icon, mostly Moss Icon, I mean, if you all, you know, were able to play now, like I could like, you know, I could make you money, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, I mean, that's cool. I appreciate that, but I just don't think it could ever happen just for like, not even so much personality issues, but more just like life, people's lives, you know?
And you mentioned, you know, the only person you keep in contact with in Moss Icon is John.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely had like a big falling out with Mark. I do keep in touch with Alex, so, and I had like sort of a falling out with Monica, but at the same time, all of that is like 20, 30 years ago, so it's not even like I don't like I don't get in touch with him, but I also like if I ran into one of them on the street, I wouldn't be like, you're an asshole. Like, I mean, it would be like I would talk to them like they're a friend, you know. So it's just more like just kind of losing touch more. And like, I mean, the shit, Mark was fucking crazy at times. He was a crazy dude. But, you know, I don't hold any grudges. Like, literally, the last time I saw Mark, he threw a beer bottle at me. Like, from far, and it landed right on my foot. So I was actually, the first thing I was like, wow, that, like, he's really, like, that was really a good shot, you know? But, yeah, I don't think it would ever happen. I don't think it could happen, mostly logistically. But if it seemed like it ever could happen, I would be open to it. So, but yeah, it's interesting, like how bands like can do stuff and just, you know.
We're talking to this
Even like native knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked to Chris, the vocalist, and numerous.
Is that Chris Leal?
Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Leal.
Yeah.
Numerous wanted to release their demo tape. They're re-releasing the discography. They decided against the demo.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But there's very much
everyone knows the demos is shit.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, that's actually been that was even a conversation with me and Numero. Like, I was kind of like, I don't know about that, you know.
You might want to hear it first. But there is this revitalization of that, and I think the world, a lot of what's coming out musically is super polished.
Yeah.
And I think there's something cool to it.
Well, that was kind of Numero's doing the UOI thing first. And this is kind of between you and me for now. So, but one of the things that came up was like, I mean, just in talking to the guy who's doing it, I was like, yeah, I guess like I brought up Turnstile to him too because I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, yeah, so like, you know, they're from Baltimore. I didn't even know that until recently. I thought they were like from the West Coast, but I was like, that band seems so huge and it's so different. But then again, say if like they have like hundreds of thousands of like downloads or followers or fans or whatever you want to call it. I mean, if you took like, see if you just took 20% of those kids, probably 20% of all those kids would probably dig a band like UOA or Moss Like Honey. And it's just they don't know about it. If you put it in front of them for them to select, or like, you know, you put it here for them to push, then there it is. The connection is made. It's that simple nowadays. Whereas like, you know, in like when I was young, I mean, I remember, to me, like looking back, it's just amazing to think about like finding out even about bands in DC when I was like 13 or 14, and I was like, shit, this sounds cool. I want to check that out. And back then it's just like through a person. You just happen to cross paths randomly with another human on the planet. It's just totally random, but they're like, and they tell you about this shit you didn't know about, and you learn about it. And it could be that thing it could be that way about anything, movies, books, like whatever. Yeah, and so but that is like, that process is just so much more condensed and concentrated now with this shit.
That's how we do it.
Yeah, so it's like,
But even that's tricky though.
yeah.
I don't think you would get Turnstile to Moss Icon. It wouldn't be an easy switch. You know?
Oh, no. I mean, I just think I think it's just a small number of people who are into any given thing would be into that other thing.
Totally.
But when there's hundreds of thousands of people, that's still like, yeah.
Well, and that'd still be a lot of, even 20% would be a large number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, talking to a established, really organized, successful record label like I am now about these reissue ideas. It's like, you know, I mean, ultimately they're good people and they're doing cool shit, but they're a business. They want to make fucking money. And I mean, that's fine. I understand that. You need money to survive, unfortunately. So it's just like, but it's actually really interesting even in a way, because one of the things they brought up was like, look, you know, we know you're like in your early 50s and I mean, once we talked about like personal stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, you're not like a professor at Hopkins. You're not making like $150,000 a year. You're broke. I've been broke most of my life. And he's like, like we should be able to, the way things are nowadays, we should be able to make it so that you'll have money in the future off of the shit that's just been sitting here on the shelf for like years. And I'm just like, well, that's cool. That's not hurting anyone. It's not like
It's deserving.
Yeah.
Why the fuck
right.
did you not?
And it's not. And I mean, I was, the thing with the DIY like record label thing and all, like there were like definitely hardcore people who are like, fuck major labels and all that. And like, I mean, I always got that. But my main thing was like, if they're really not telling you how to sound, or like, if you're just doing your thing and they're going to give you money, like, I don't really have a problem with that.
Humor is cool too.
Yeah.
They're fucking bad.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying, like,
the anti-establishment.
Yeah.
Like any umbrella, like putting you
Right.
Yeah.
because I mean, even when like Nirvana signed to Geffen, I mean, I guess to some extent they were probably made to do things they didn't necessarily like. I remember Kurt Cobain like saying something about he didn't like the way Nevermind the mix was. It sounded too commercial. But it's still like, it doesn't sound like fucking REO Speedwagon or Britney Spears. I mean, it's still like Nirvana,
It wasn't a huge set.
Right. So
And you made a bunch of fucking money.
right.
So.
I mean, those people are set. But yeah, it's interesting how things have. It's like gone from really obscure to being, to known. Yeah, I mean, even just like the Numero puts out like this like obscure soul stuff they put out. It's just like no one would have probably ever known about some of that shit, except for like a couple hundred people who buy these expensive 7 inches off of Discogs. Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Exactly.
Might as well enjoy the fruits of such
Yeah.
Good time, man.
Cool. So how when you all actually have like a film, a movie together, how do you all envision like distributing it or getting out there?
This is very much. I've been friends with him for the last decade.
Awesome.
And we love this music.
Yeah.
And we're about to split ways. And it seems very much in vein of a lot of these bands that, as youths, we're really tight knit, and
Right.
inevitably real life hits. Right?
Right.
You guys all have to go your own way. So that's kind of
Right.
we're gonna make.
To your question, I think we're marketing it as best we can via Instagram, and we'll put it out. I mean, we're going to submit it to Heat Fest.
Yeah, on our Instagram, we put out a teaser of
Right.
each interview.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but then we want to make that too.
Yeah, full feature.
Yeah.
So film festivals.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what we're trying
And
to do.
hopefully get a fucking
You should. I mean,
Yeah, we're trying so hard.
trying to what?
Oh, well, we've thought about like applying for grants.
Oh yeah.
We've done this all ourselves.
Yeah. So hopefully some post grants and
Right.
some editing help, because
Right.
we're getting better at the 2-minute
Yeah,
teasers.
but
But like,
looking at all that
we have,
footage,
I mean, we're
we have
working
like
with like
35 grants.
yeah, and we already
Yeah.
have like 20 hours of footage. It's
Cool.
definitely getting.
Well, he's just like an acquaintance, but I know at least one of the people who is big, high up in the Maryland Film Festival. So I would definitely say, like, when you get to that point, I would talk to the Maryland Film Festival.
And then we'll contact you.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, we'll send you
We
over.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is very
But we're going to
exciting.
just submit it to all.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well, that's the thing. There's so many nowadays, even with that,
It's
I
accessible.
mean,
There's
the
not
dream
just-
is like to get it out like a Sundance and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that would, like Toronto or Sundance would be amazing.
Yeah.
But if you get something smaller, it'd still be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we just do
Anything,
anything
dude.
because it's like I think you're starting with a similar problem too. It's just a odd thing to market, kind of. Even though it's,
Yeah.
I think people would understand and like feel the resonance of the story.
Human
Right.
condition, right? That's
Yeah.
transcendent.
Yeah, I guess some of it is just really a matter of presenting it in a certain way that people like. immediately click on and like, okay, yeah.
We've been all right with the marketing aspect of it. I think
So,
far so good.
I mean, is it sort of a mix of older bands and newer bands? So see, that can be like such a great thing because you're showing a thread
Well, it's analysis.
through
It's
history.
common ground.
Yeah.
We're trying to find where do they all like reside? Where
Right.
does it come, or where does it blossom?
Like
Yeah.
the kids who are doing it now, living very ragtag.
Right.
Versus like when you have to settle down and everything dissipates.
And then we're also on the breaking point too of like where this
Right,
last
right.
one. So hopefully, and I'm staying in school.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, because besides the thread running through the histories of the music and the bands, you also have people just having to survive and live their lives, and how does that play into everything? So,
Well, regardless, thank you so much for being part of it, man.
thank you
Yeah.
for asking me.
Of course.
Yeah, it was
Here's some great
pleasure.
answers.
you know?
Cool.
Let's back this shit up, buddy.